Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are around the world. Once again, welcome to another Office Hours here from Hosting.com's Agency Success. My name is Nathan Ingram, and I'm the host and trainer here at Agency Success, and really glad that you are here with us today. We have a bunch of questions stacked up in the queue, and we'll get started off as well, talking about some WordPress news as usual. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please use the link that is waiting on you right now in the chat, and that will let you ask a question to get it into the queue. We do have a few left over from last week, so we will definitely start with those. But there are a total of eight questions in the queue already, so we should have a lot to talk about today. All right. Well, let's get started with some WordPress news. A few interesting things have been happening here in the last week. I saw this last week, but I didn't. We had so much other things to talk about as we got started that I did not focus on this. And this is something to keep your eye on, okay? The AI team and Felix Arntz in particular has made a proposal to merge the WP AI client into core WordPress at 7.0. What is the WP API client, you might ask? Well, let me drop the links for you in the chat, and you can click over. That opens up a GitHub repo where the WordPress API client is talked about. And basically what this does, it makes it puts a layer inside of WordPress that will go talk to different AI models. And so it's a standardized way. So like in one spot, you could, for example, connect to OpenAI or to Anthropic or whatever you wanted to do with an API key. And so it's one spot in core WordPress that all plugins can kind of hop into that and jump out to get AI information, right? So it's sort of like, for example, the WP mail function. We talked about that a couple weeks ago when we did the transactional email live stream. And so there's this function in WordPress that sends mail. And if you decide, well, I want to use Postmark or Mailgun to send mail instead of the regular server way, that you can put in a plugin that just taps into that function and it sends through this other route. And this is not exactly like that, but similar, where you'll be able to connect WordPress to your favorite AI model and plugins instead of having to do that themselves, like 5 different plugins in WordPress, and you have to configure all of them to talk to AI separately in their own special ways. This is like one thing in WordPress where plugins will just tap into that and then go talk to your AI tool of choice. I think that's a really good idea. It's going to do a lot of different things, especially in collaboration with the Abilities API that's already part of Core. It was added into Core a couple of versions ago, and the Abilities API is basically this thing that allows WordPress to expose. Here are all the things that an AI can do, and then plugins can also attach into that and open up some of their functionality for AI to talk to. So all these things going together, there's real momentum in bringing AI in, I think, a smart way into core WordPress. So it'll all be optional, of course, but all of the framework is there so that there's a smart, reusable, scalable way to bring in your favorite AI tool into WordPress in whatever way you want to use it. So that's pretty cool. And so there's some information about that here. And you can learn more here on the GitHub repo if you want to dig down, or just give your favorite AI tool those 2 links and say, hey, explain this to me better. And it'll talk to you about that. So this is coming. It's not accepted into core for WordPress 7.0, but usually when you see a proposal for merge, like a merge proposal like this, it's pretty well done, unless there's some real pushback. So pretty interesting stuff, I think. It's really great to see the momentum that the WordPress AI team has around the work they're doing. So here's another one. There is a new AI experiments plugin, and they're looking for folks to test it. So if you want to get your feet wet in how, what the core WordPress AI team is doing, then this is a great way to just kind of dip your toe in, right? And so these are experiments for sure. And you can learn more about this. So this will be a fun thing. If you've got an afternoon where maybe just spin up a blank WordPress install. I wouldn't do this on a live website, but spin up a blank WordPress install and you can, well, you can actually do it right here with this playground link. And they've also given you an experiments plugin, which is not clickable for some reason. Okay. Anyway, you can spin up a plugin instance and it will install all the things here. So they want feedback on how the comment moderation assistance works. That's kind of cool. They want feedback on the way Markdown, consuming Markdown or creating Markdown feeds works. So here's just a practical way for you to get involved and offer some feedback to the WordPress API AI team in the work that they're doing. I think it's kind of cool. Now, here's another bit from James LePage, again, part of the WordPress AI team. This is a post talking about an experiment within Gutenberg for what they're calling content guidelines. Now, you may have worked with a client perhaps in the past, or maybe you have something like this, either officially or unofficially for your own website. Content guidelines are basically, what is the tone? Let's see if we got here. Yeah, voice and tone, structural rules, what kind of images you ought to have, what are the accessibility expectations, how you do linking, all those sorts of things. Like a lot of, especially larger organizations, will have a content brief where it just basically anyone can come in and write using the predefined tone that is the business brand tone, right? Well, what this experiment does is bring that into WordPress. Now, why is that important? Well, at the very basic level, instead of having to go find a PDF somewhere, you could just pull it up inside of WordPress. But here's the neater thing. What they're going to do is make the content guidelines information available to your AI tool. So when you go in to start creating content, you could use an AI tool that sees your existing brand content guidelines to help you create a first draft that is way better than generic garbage AI text. That's pretty cool, I think. And you can click on that link and learn a little bit more about what James is asking for here in this experiment. It's pretty neat. Something else I want to talk about. Have you played with OpenClaw yet? So OpenClaw is, if you Google it, you're going to see OpenClaw is going to destroy your computer and it's like the end of the world and whatever. OpenClaw is basically an open source agent, AI agent that you install either locally on your own computer or like on a VPS out there where it's kind of walled off. And there are some security concerns, okay? There are also very easy ways to deal with those. But the neat thing is it can just sort of do things for you, especially if it has access to local files and things. It is, like Doug is saying in the chat, it's similar to Claude Cowork, but it's kind of even bigger and potentially better in some ways. In some ways, Claude Cowork is going to be better as well. But what's neat about this is an experiment with this plugin right here, the WP OpenClaw plugin, that lets an OpenClaw instance connect to your WordPress website. And from right on your own computer, like you talk to this AI tool through Slack or through iMessage or through Telegram or something like that. Like you connect it to this external text tool and you just talk to it like you were talking to a coworker. That's what it's trying to be like. And the security things are just like anytime I would onboard somebody into my business, like you're not going to give them access to your whole credit card and bank information. Like there's a limited set of things you would give an employee access to. And that's kind of how you think about this bot. But this, here's just a screenshot from the developer of this plugin. And it shows, all right, do you have access? Yeah, here's your site. There's some posts. Here's some plugins I see. Do I like the website? I love it for these reasons. here's what I see: 13 gigs of files, a full database, full working site, and I have WP CLI control. And that's going to let this bot do pretty much anything on this website. So pretty amazing. Again, something you may want to play with a little bit. This plugin, it is on GitHub. And what they suggest is give your bot access to the agent skills repo from Automatic, which is right here. So this is something that James LePage has put together. And it's basically a set of skills for Claude Code and other things that show, it's kind of like a set of predefined instructions, more or less. That's oversimplified, but it's a set of instructions that helps a bot or an AI agent know how to access and deal with WordPress things. And so simply by pointing OpenClaw to this GitHub lab, it now knows how to do all things WordPress. It's remarkable. So it's worth playing around with just to see. I find it fascinating. So, why would you do this? Would I ever use this on a client site? Not yet, certainly. But folks, AI is moving so fast. We have to stay with it. There are so many things happening in AI. Experimenting, taking a little time every week to just, give me an afternoon or a couple of hours where all I'm going to do is go into an AI rabbit hole and experiment with all of these new things that are coming out, like Claude Code, like Claude Cowork, like ChatGPT Codex, like OpenClaw and things like that. We're going to need to stay up to date because this thing is just moving too fast. There's the two latest models that were just released from ChatGPT and Claude were created mostly by AI. There's some, I don't have these links for you today, but there's discussion I've been reading about how so much of the next generation of AI is being written by today's AI, which means it's just going to go so much faster. Yeah, so we're going to have to stay with it, and we have to invest time to learn these things, or we're going to get left in the dust. It's just the nature of where we are. I read an article earlier this week or yesterday where the author was saying, look, if your job involves you sitting by a screen, you must learn AI. Like, you've got to know and stay up to date with what's happening in AI and learn how to use the tools to do your work better. So that's out there. All right. One more thing I'll mention. This is a little crazy. It was mentioned on the WP Tavern podcast, and I went and Googled it, and they've got this stat all over the place now. But Miriam Schwab, who is, I'm not sure what her title is with Elementor. She's a delightful person. I don't know what her title is. She's one of she's on the leadership team at Elementor. Elementor powers 13% of the web. Pausing for a moment. 13% of the web. That's a lot. It's pretty amazing. So there's your stat of the day. Okay, one more little bit before we move into our questions for the week. I'm going to drop in our link bundle here in the chat. If you've missed this or haven't gotten this link before, the first link in that bundle, upcoming.myagencysuccess.com. That will take you to this link tree where all of our upcoming live streams are. The Imposter Syndrome live stream, I believe, is now live on our YouTube channel. Pretty sure Katie can confirm that in the chat. And our next Agency Success live stream, content live stream, is on the 24th. That is a week from Tuesday, where I'll be talking to your clients about WordPress security. And that's going to be a fun one. So as always, we'll have office hours every Thursday, and March 10th, we'll be talking about pricing. Okay, well, let's dig into some questions, shall we? Checking our question list again. We have 11 questions in the queue, so many things. All right, Ben, his question here. This is from Ben, leftover from last week. Following up on the OmniSend report, and I shared a link last week from OmniSend, which is a transactional email and other, they do really well with abandoned carts and things like that. They had some stats about their email sends from 2025. What are the top email automation providers to work with Woo? That's a great question. We don't do any of that in my agency, so I'm probably not the sharpest person to ask. OmniSend is a big one, and cart flows is another really good one. There are many others, and I'd invite anybody, if you're currently using something to do um, email automation with WooCommerce, put your suggestion in the chat. But the two big ones that I'm aware of now are OmniSend and of course cart flows, which has been around for a while. Let's see. Beth had the question in the chat. What was the 13% statistic? It said 13% of the web is powered by Elementor. 13% of the web is powered by Elementor. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. All right. Next up in the list is from Awesome Paul. This is also a leftover from last week. It's a good one. Can you give a quick overview of how you get the most out of Whisper? So Whisper Flow, if you've not ever seen this, is a superb little tool. Paul, I haven't really optimized this well. I've got a couple of little macros that I use, but it's mostly I'm just dictating. So for those of you, if you are a computer geezer such as myself, you probably remember an app for Windows a million years ago called Dragon Naturally Speaking. It's kind of like that, but 1,000 times better, right? So it's dictation and it recognizes speech in multiple languages, but it sort of picks up like better. It does a little better than that because it will, like, if you Dragon Naturally Speaking or a typical transcription, if you make a mistake, it types out the mistake and everything. This one, let's do an appointment on Tuesday. No, make that Monday at whatever. It will actually clean up what you say and make it sound good. And you can also, just like I have this macro here, where if I do OHQ, it inflates this link to office hours questions. It will do that, but with voice. So let's see if it'll do office hours questions. No, let's see. I forget what the macro is I set up for this. Ask your question. There it is. See, so just with a voice, it did that. Again, ask your question. Boom. Yeah, so you can do things like that where you save bundles of text with a macro-like approach. So it's really cool. I'm still using the free version right now. Although this, I believe, is something I'm going to invest in. I just have a lot more work to do with it. It's such a cool tool, and I'm barely scratching the surface of what it'll do. It's also super helpful on the iPhone because I tend to transcribe or dictate to my iPhone more than I'll do that quickly. It's a lot quicker than typing on the little keypad. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know. But it'll work on your iPhone and it cleans up, your it cleans up your text really well. Yeah. So this is definitely one to play with. It's not terribly expensive. Yeah, $12 a month. I probably use it worth $12 a month. Yeah. All right. Great question, Paul. Thank you for that. Next in the list is Tanya. I believe this was a holdover from last week as well. Tanya, you may have done this one already. I'm about to migrate my first website from a subdirectory, but now I need to do it on my own. Any advice, tutorials, or prayers? Tanya, did you get this one squared away? I don't see Tanya. Tanya's not here today. So this project either killed her or she's just not able to be with us. We'll see. Could have gone either way. So the answer really would have depended on the tool that you're using, but most WordPress backup / migration tools are going to have a restore wizard that just makes it really easy. The hardest part is just making sure the old URL is updated to the new URL. And if you're using a migration tool, just about all of them, I think all of them, can we just say all of them do that final step of the search replace of the URL in the database? Yeah. So Tanya, if you're watching the replay, hopefully this job didn't kill you. And if so, come back and tell us about it from the grave. Okay. Next is Sue. Hey, Sue. This notice from Google reCAPTCHA. I'm leaning toward removing them all. Some are really not being used on older sites. What are you doing if you're using reCAPTCHA? What is your best recommendation? The PDF of the notice is here. Okay. Sue, I'm trusting you that this is something I can show on the screen. Oh, yeah. Okay. I did see this. Yeah. So this is the notice that the reCAPTCHA is, yeah, they're just changing how they do the data processing. Um, I am not using reCAPTCHA and I don't recommend it. I think it's horrible for a lot of different reasons. First, I hate clicking crosswalks and stoplights and bicycles. Does anybody else? I mean, does anybody just wake up in the morning going, I want to open up my website and click 8 sidewalks or 8 motorcycles, right? It's just whatever. Um, Google reCAPTCHA, I moved away from Google reCAPTCHA a couple of years ago when they lowered the tier limit to something that's really ridiculous. And you have to set up an API key and a payment method. It's just ridiculous. And Google reCAPTCHA drops a tracking cookie on the website. So I just don't recommend it at all. There are much better options, even from a security and usability perspective. So two things I'll recommend instead. The first is hCaptcha. hCaptcha is supported by CAPTCHA is supported by lots of different plugins and tools. It's great. It is simpler than using a reCAPTCHA, and it sets up the same way. It's easier for the user. But what I really truly recommend is Cloudflare Turnstile. So most folks, where you have reCAPTCHA is in 2 places in WordPress, maybe 3. If you have comments enabled, then probably there's a reCAPTCHA there. On forms, right before they're submitted, and then on the WordPress login to protect the WordPress login page. If you're using Cloudflare and the traffic is coming in through Cloudflare and you've got some good security rules and you're challenging traffic, for example, all traffic as part of my default rule set that's going to a WordPress login page, that traffic is going to pass through a managed challenge from Cloudflare, which is the same thing as Turnstile. And so we don't even put CAPTCHAs on forms anymore because Cloudflare is filtering out all that garbage spam traffic at the network level. Yeah. So Sue, if you are using Cloudflare and if you're using a good rule set, then I don't think you need a CAPTCHA on forms. Now, that being said, you want to monitor that and just make sure that there's not some weird, confluence in the spam universe that they're able for some reason to get through that to your site. The other thing is, if you're using Gravity Forms, I cannot highly recommend enough Gravity. Watch, here's a good example for WhisperFlow. Gravity Forms 0 spam. And right there. So this plugin, you just install it and activate it, and it magically stops much of the spam. We don't have automated spam getting through our sites. So we protect forms with Cloudflare at the network level, Gravity Forms 0 spam on the site itself. And the only spam that comes through is human-generated spam, which you can't stop because it's an actual human. Yeah. So does that answer your question, Sue? Ditch Google reCAPTCHA. Oh, okay. So Sue's talking about reCAPTCHA on the whole site, the bottom right corner. Okay. Now let's talk about that because reCAPTCHA has a couple of different flavors. reCAPTCHA version 3 is going to put a script that it drops a cookie, runs a script on every page of the site. You can change it in the settings of some plugins depending on how you're installing it, but it wants to run on every page. So you get that little tag thing at the bottom corner. And that means it's tracking traffic through your whole site. And it does that so that it can detect bot-like behavior, right? So there's a technical reason for it, but also it's another instance of Google poking its nose into what your users are doing. And it could be problematic for, cookies and privacy and all of that sort of thing. That's why I recommend just get rid of the whole thing, do your filtering at the network as much as possible, and then put Gravity Forms 0 spam if you're using Gravity Forms. There's unfortunately not a similar plugin for other big form plugins. So, but if you're a Gravity Forms person, it's like it's a wonderful addition. Sue, so just remove the script? Yes. Well, okay, you're saying remove the script. So something, Sue, is adding reCAPTCHA to your site. It might be your security plugin. That's usually where it comes from. Okay. Yeah, so if you're using solid security, that's probably where it's set up. Gene is asking, if a site doesn't use Cloudflare, can it still use Cloudflare Turnstile? Yes. In fact, it can. Cloudflare Turnstile. And you will have to set up a Cloudflare account, but the site doesn't have to be running through it. So basically, what you'll do is create a free Cloudflare account. I'm just going to drop this link in the chat, and one of the options will be to set up Turnstile, and it'll give you API keys just like other CAPTCHA solutions do. But that site does not have to have its DNS running through Cloudflare to work. Okay. Have we exhausted all the questions on this one? This was a fun discussion. David is saying many form plugins have a spam function that does not require using something like the no spam plugin. Yeah, so Gravity Forms, for example, has a built-in it's called a honeypot, right? And they've actually made it a little better recently. But what I've found is much spam can bypass the forms built-in honeypot feature. It'll catch some, but some of the better, more modern spam it's smart enough to bypass a honeypot. And David is also talking about Clean Talk. And so, David, for years we use Clean Talk. What I found is two reasons we went away from it. First, it's really inexpensive. Like I think it was $15 a month for all of our sites. It's great. But it's very heavy-handed. It was catching it was having a lot of false positives, and we were having clients where users were being affected by it. The second thing is it can be a little slow because it does put like a firewall in front, and it can be a little slow. When we moved everything to Cloudflare, it just became unnecessary, and we got rid of it. But it's a decent solution. You just have to be aware that it can be heavy-handed against legitimate traffic. Gene is asking, which is better, hCaptcha versus Turnstile? I would 100% do Cloudflare Turnstile, simply for this reason. I forget the percentage. It's like 30% of the traffic of the internet. I made that up. It's something like that. Huge chunk of internet traffic is processed through Cloudflare, which means they have a huge data set to recognize bot spam behavior, which means their challenge mechanism has so much data behind it. It's really effective. hCaptcha is a good solution, but if I had to choose between the two, it's hands down Cloudflare Turnstile. And by the way, Cloudflare Turnstile and a Cloudflare managed challenge are the same technology. Turnstile just takes Cloudflare's managed challenge tech and puts it in a widget on your website, like a little piece of code. So Turnstile is an embeddable managed challenge. Just for clarity. Okay. Oh, Terry has the stat, 20%. More than 20%. Yeah, it's a huge chunk. Okie dokie. Next up is Beth Livingston. Hey, Beth Livingston. All right. If you have a news site that is getting about 100 visitors per day and you post a blog article, but then decide to change the title and slug the next day, this is hypothetical, right, Beth? Should you still redirect? Does it hurt to have a bazillion redirects? In other words, redirect whenever you change anything, even if it hasn't been posted for very long. Absolutely. Like, why would you not? Sure. Like in this case, I would definitely redirect. Better, just make sure you know what you're going to post, right? Put it out there, and that's what it's going to be. Do your research before you publish. Or, if there's a different angle that the title needs to pick up, rewrite the article from that angle. Now you got two. Yeah. So yes, I would, in this scenario, I would definitely redirect. Now that's different though than this question. Does it hurt to have a bazillion redirects? It could, particularly if you have a redirect going to a redirect, like a chain of redirects. Google does not like that at all. But the chances that Google actually picked up that article on the first day and indexed it with the old title and slug, probably low. Maybe. And then you definitely want to redirect in that case. Sue is asking, is the redirection plugin an issue with California CIPA law? I don't think one of these things is not like the other. I don't think there's any I don't think those things relate unless you're asking about something I'm not considering. No, redirection does not drop the redirection plugin by John Godley, the OG redirection plugin for WordPress called redirection, does not drop a cookie. And there's a question from Jamie that always comes up when we talk about redirects. Is it okay to remove redirects from old URLs from years ago? I mean, you can, but why? They're not hurting anything. Google doesn't know that you have 1,000 redirects defined. It's not looking at your list and going, you should really. Google doesn't do that. I would just leave it there because maybe there's a chance that somebody somewhere, there's a link in a note or something. Might as well keep those. They're not hurting anything. All right. Okie dokie. Next up is Jamie. Hey, Jamie. Okay. Based on your recommendation last week for solid security, I investigated it and tried the free version. Unfortunately, the free version doesn't come with the ability to export settings via JSON. Yep, that's where they get you. So I would have to configure for each site. Thus, I'm looking at the pro version. Would you be willing to share your settings for configuration? Okay, Jamie, let's see. If you go and look on the old Solid Academy website when I was doing a bunch of content there, and you just look for my name and search for me in Solid Security, you'll find live streams where I stepped through the settings that I use in Solid Security. That's what I'd recommend that you do. Yeah. So the free version, there's a couple of things that the free version does not do that I think make it worth getting the pro version. Passkeys, I don't think somebody correct me. I've been using the pro version since it came out, but I think passkeys aren't included, and that's really important. Also, the trusted devices feature, critical part of the plugin because that will help you deal with any stolen session cookie issues. And also the PatchStack integration. That's really the killer feature of Solid Security or any other plugin that brings in PatchStack. Because what it'll do is if you have a plugin that is vulnerable and PatchStack has a mitigation, PatchStack will automatically filter out that traffic so that the vulnerability can't be exploited. Which means if the developer takes 2 weeks or 4 weeks to actually patch the problem, you're safe until then. That's really, and it happens automatically. So that's really, really cool. So Stacy's talking about it cost extra. I know what you're saying, Stacy, but if you if you buy Solid Security today, it includes PatchStack. So people that had and were customers years ago, it was like an add-on, but now every version of Solid Security includes PatchStack. And there are others too. I like the philosophy behind Solid Security. Okie dokie. Jamie, is that good? All right. Next question from Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, I've created a fantastic set of MU plugins for my sites. Awesome. Which is a lot better than all the snippets I had on various sites. Yes. Isn't that great? So we did the same thing a few years ago, Jeffrey, and first of all, it feels really good. Like in your base site, you got all your MU plugins in there and you know what they do and you've got all these functions. It's really cool. So what is your deployment method when you make changes that you need to push out to all of your sites? Aha! And here we find the downside of the MU plugin because you can't do that. You have to push them out manually or figure out some tool that can push out to an MU plugin. We haven't found one. So yes, this is the sort of thing where that's the downside of an MU plugin versus an actual plugin that you can deploy changes to. So this is why for scripts, like you want to be very sure what you're putting in the MU plugins. So as we, talked about these things during the starter site live streams at the end of last year, you want to make sure you're not just putting any garbage snippets out there in your MU plugins. These are things that are going to be, they're solid, they're standardized, they're not going to cause problems. I've only really had one problem with our MU plugin stack. And I know many of you, especially if have been with me for years, you also had this problem. And it was the remove howdy, like on the end of the back end of the dashboard, howdy, Nathan. I hate that howdy. I think it's unprofessional and I don't want my clients seeing howdy. And there was some code that we would use to change it to welcome. And inexplicably, core WordPress changed the way you had to do that. And they didn't tell anybody. And so now you got error logs filled up with invalid, blah, 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 blah. It's very rare that core WordPress actually removes a function like that, but they did. And anyway, we had to go change that on every single stinking site. It's really annoying. And I don't know of a better way to do it. If somebody does know a way, I am all ears. Yeah, definitely try it on a staging site. And Terry and Gene are both mentioning ASE, which I also, we've invested in this plugin. We really, really like admin and site enhancements. And it has pared down the number of functions that are in our base set of MU plugins, because so much of it is just right here. It also replaced a bunch of discrete plugins that just did certain things, like a login page customizer or, blah, blah, blah. Really cool. We really like this. And it's pretty inexpensive for what you get, to be honest. And they have a lifetime deal. Ooh, it's kind of expensive. I scratched that. I think they've raised the prices. This is really good to get on Black Friday. But honestly, it's probably worth the cost. But yeah, it does go on sale. Okie dokie. Let's see who's next here. Jeffrey, is that good? I wish I had a better answer for you. All right, next up is Shanta. Okay, Shanta warned us about this one in the pre-show. So here we go. Shanta, do I need to take a deep breath? Oh, feel free to get out the soapbox. Okay, here we go. I'm helping to plan for our company to attend a conference. I've attended a bunch. I've even planned a bunch, but I've never planned to be an exhibitor/sponsor. My boss is already speaking, but I want him out and networking, not tied to a booth. Smart move. I've heard from many of our sponsor friends in the WordPress space that sponsoring exhibiting doesn't really cover the cost of attending, etc. I'd like to know if you have thoughts of sponsoring things like coffee breaks, meals, having a booth. I'm trying to figure out ROIs. I've heard that they are really hard to calculate, and I'd love to know what best way to run a booth and what should I have there. Oh my goodness, Shanta. I have never been on that side of an event. So I have never planned a booth. I have planned events. I was a WordCamp organizer for many years. And do I want to do a webinar on it? Absolutely not. No, not at all. So I will, here's what I will say. The booths that I have seen get a lot of traffic that where they're actually engaging with people are ones that have something clever going on, right? It's just going to attract attention and make you stand out. The other thing, I was at WordCamp US last year as a speaker, and I also spent a lot of time around the hosting.com booth. And one of the things that hosting.com did really, really well with their booth last year was it was wide open. Like there were a couple of desks that kind of hemmed in a corner, but it was wide open with lots of seating area. And so people, like every time you come in there, there are people who are sitting down, they're having conversations there. It was like intentionally laid out to create connection and conversation. And Katie, I think Katie did that. It was a great job on all that layout and thoughtfulness. Aside from the table that didn't come with screws, and if you touched it, it kind of fell over, right? I forget what that was. Anyway, but Katie, Shanta, talk to Katie. I think it was at an IKEA table. It was like the IKEA worst nightmare table. Anyway, it was held up with tape, I believe, but get good tables. But having space, if your booth can accommodate that, rather than putting a wall between, like a lot of people I've seen with booths, they they put their desk like right at the edge of their booth so they have a bunch of space behind them. And then you've basically walled people off from interaction. So if you think about the booth from the goal of we want to make connection, think about your arrangement if you have that option in the venue. That's right. That's where I met TJ. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Good, great. So maybe Katie can give you some thoughts. Okie dokie. Next up is Doug. Hey, Doug. Ooh, this sounds like fun. A fraudulent PayPal Amazon invoice was added to my Microsoft Outlook calendar as a meeting invite, though I never approved it. Oh, the calendar invite spam is the latest thing. How many of you, just give me a yes in the chat if you've gotten calendar invite spam, where it just like shows up on my calendar? Like, what the heck? I think the calendar provide, and also Zoom call invitation spam is another big one. Um, and the like with PayPal, I even had somebody sent me a penny or a dime, 10 cents or 1 cent through PayPal with and that was their pitch. Like their pitch was the content of the PayPal notification message. It was so crazy. I mean, I give them an A for effort. Like that's clever. But anyway, okay. So Doug is saying the event claimed I'd be charged money for an Apple Magic Keyboard and urged me to call a phone number to cancel. Oh, spammers be spamming. Deleting the calendar item and not calling the number was the correct response, and my actual PayPal account never showed a charge. Yeah, it's just Outlook's auto accept settings were already off, so this likely arrived as a spam calendar invite that it displayed. Interesting. Yeah, so it's a thing, and the payload of a lot of these spam messages are ICS files that'll get sucked into your calendar as a pending, and it's just another way for spammers to realize, okay, here's another portal into this person's attention, right? So yeah, crazy. Now, also there are two things here. First, the cleverness of spam increases with the output abilities of AI. Spammers are using AI just like we are, y'all, and so the cleverness and attempts are only going to get bigger. Second thing is I remember a few years ago when there was that massive LastPass data breach, and like stored in plain text were email addresses and the site where the account was. Now, not the password, but LastPass exposed, as I recall, information that would allow someone who got access to the compromise your email address, and they could also put together what services that you had logins for. And so that would let them say, oh, this person uses Outlook because they have an Outlook account. And oh, this person uses PayPal because they have, and then so they can combine those two into a message that you might be more likely to pay attention to. So that's just another thing. The spammers get more capable. And I have heard and understood that services like Outlook and Google Calendar and others that are processing these ICS files and other things, they're also upping their anti-spam. So it's this ongoing war, right? Yeah. It's clever. And you are definitely not the only one, Doug. That'd be a fun thing, though, to email out to your clients as a, hey, guess what happened to me this week? You might want to watch this too. Spammers are clever. Okay, next up is Dave. Hey, Dave. I know it's been 3 weeks now. Any further developments in the CIPA, California Invasion of Privacy Act? Maybe ask the group what, if anything, they are doing about it. I will pause quickly to ask Katie, have we talked to Hans yet about this? I know we were going to try to reach out to Hans from Termageddon to come and talk about CIPA. So, okay, good. So it's in process. So hopefully we'll have Hans from Termageddon to come in and talk about all of that. For me, I have gone through all my clients. I have put them in different categories of, do I want them to push toward Termageddon, or do we want to either remove Google Analytics completely or opt for something like Independent Analytics, which is a cookieless WordPress-based analytics system. And so we're in the process of contacting clients with that. Had a bunch sign up for Termageddon, so like the dollars are good out of it. Although that's not the primary reason, of course. It's just a nice extra. It makes the hassle worth it. And then, we're probably, I guess, 75% through the list of clients and reaching out to them. So we're doing them in batches so we don't have a ton hit us all at once. Dave, you're saying, are you worried just about Google Analytics? So I am not a lawyer and this is not legal advice given, right? What I understand after doing a fair amount of research into these law firms that are sending CIPA demand letters. They're really looking at a couple of things. They're looking at social media tracking pixels, particularly Meta and LinkedIn, and they're also looking at Google Analytics. Like those are the two things that are the low-hanging fruit for them to go try to grab the most, the most money. So Google, most of my clients aren't using social tracking pixels. All of our clients, except for one or two, were using Google Analytics. So yeah, it's a big deal. That is one of the things. Now, the law says, and we'll want, again, Hans will come in and talk about this hopefully at some point soon, but the law says if you drop a tracking cookie on my computer without my express consent, it breaks the law, right? So any tracking cookie is going to be a violation of CIPA if I don't have the ability to opt out of it. And you can't put it on my computer until I opt out, or pardon me, until I opt in. So you have to have some tool that's going to stop the cookie from being placed by default until the user opts in. And I'll tell you that one of the biggest challenges we've had with this is from clients that have digital marketing people. And they're like, you're going to screw up our analytics. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. Like either you can not worry about the analytics from California, or you can take a risk of getting a $5,000 demand letter from some attorney. It's really frustrating. So, people won't be tracked by Google Analytics until they opt in. That's just unfortunately the way it is. Beth, does it apply to necessary cookies? No. So CIPA in particular, and again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. All this prefaced by, as I understand it, having done a fair amount of research. The Invasion of Privacy Act, the thing is, like, it was built around wiretapping. Like, you can't tap me, you can't take my voice, you can't, without my consent. And they've applied that to tracking pixels on the internet. And so it's tracking pixels. It's not security like Cloudflare. If you're using Cloudflare, it's going to drop a cookie, a clearance cookie. It's not talking about that. It's not tracking. It's for security. If you log into a WordPress site, it's going to put a cookie. It's not talking about that. It's talking about like analytics tracking, pixel tracking, things like that. Hans can certainly answer that better than I can, but that's the way I understand it. Beth, the cookie consent, well, I'll just pull this. If you missed out on this previous discussion, here's Termageddon's write-up, and I recommend Termageddon. I've known the founders for many years. They are a married couple. Hans is a former agency owner, sold his agency in Chicago and started doing Termageddon when GDPR first started to become a thing. He's the vice president of the company. His wife, Donata, is an attorney, and she is the chairman of the American Bar Association e-Privacy Committee and a couple of other tech-related committees in the ABA. She's the real deal. She is a true expert in this, and that's why I opt toward this solution. And I know that there's one on AppSumo out there that you can get a lifetime deal on, but honestly, this is one that I can trust because I know the people behind it are true experts. So Termageddon.com, that's what I recommend. Okie dokie. Let's keep moving here. 4 questions left and just a few minutes remaining. So Gene, you are next. Gene says, I'm experimenting with WP Umbrella as an option to replace Solid Central. I like that it has the PatchStack option, which is part of the security dashboard. Yep. But because I have Solid Security, I'm wondering if this is duplicating some features. I don't have PatchStack virtual patching enabled with Solid Security. Will there be conflicts, overlapping features, or whatever? Does WP Umbrella play well with Solid Security? I have no idea, but I can answer it in principle, Gene. This is another one of those situations where you don't want 2 plugins trying to do the same thing, right? So you don't want 2 plugins trying to add PatchStack because you might have 2 PatchStacks in there, and that might slow things down. So you want one of those things would be what would be the thing you would want to put PatchStack and embed their tools on the site. So far, I have 4 sites on both dashboards. One site, the site disconnects from Solid Central dashboard. That's interesting. I don't know what's causing that. You'd have to reach out to their support. Yeah, so I would, if you're going to use PatchStack, then either Umbrella or Solid Security needs to be the thing, but not both. So does that answer your question? That's a great piece of advice from Melanie in the chat. Choose the one thing you will keep the longest. Oh, Gene, you're saying you don't have PatchStack with solid security? Yeah, then you should be fine. Yep, you should be fine. With the preface of I have never used WP Umbrella once in my life. I know people that love it. It's just never been part of our tool set. Okie dokie. Shanta is next. Remember the DKIM problem from last week where certain emails were getting returned? I do. I know we talked about email deliverability. My thinking based on our discussion last week is that doing a plugin on WordPress install like SMTP deliverability won't work if we don't fix the potential DKIM problem. That was our text guy's analysis, and I want to get your opinion. I don't think this guy knows what he's doing. Well, good thing we're recording this and it's going to be on the internet. I've replaced our website with x.co. Okay, all the things. All right. The DKIM, DMARC, and SPF records appear to be in order and have passed third-party tests. But would it be good to clean up and remove any unneeded records, confirm the DKIM, DMARC with your email provider, test a website transaction to see if the emails are blocked? Okay, so that looks fine. Is this the only SPF record that's in the DNS, Shanta? Because two SPF records will always cause problems. Two separate SPF records. They have to be combined into one. I guess my question is, a WordPress plugin like SMTP deliverability won't work if we don't fix the potential DKIM problem. Okay, so if you're using Postmark, for example, which is what I recommend, Postmark is going to handle your DKIM and all of the things for it. Okay, so transactional emails sent through the website, if you're using Postmark, it's going to have its own DKIM records, and it handles all of those things. Now, you'll need a DMARC record, which you have, and P equals quarantine. That's what you want today. But Postmark handles its own DKIM. And when you're going to add DNS records to authenticate that with Postmark. Okay. Now, where DKIM could still be a problem is, what are you using for actual people email, right? So those records need to be aligned so that your actual people email is still delivered correctly. So it all has to be set up for real email, but your that's what you're paying Postmark for, is to make sure that all that stuff lines up and just works. Does that make sense? We good on that one? Okie dokie. Next up is Kristen. Hey, Kristen. Hi, Nathan. I know you don't want to talk about CIPA again, and neither do I. But I'm wondering if you can share how you're approaching clients about it. We're auditing our client sites for things that might violate CIPA but load without consent. And we're starting to reach out to people recommending Termageddon and so forth. In the past, they would say, CCPA doesn't apply to us. You're right. It probably doesn't, unless you're collecting I think it's 25,000 names of California residents, or you're marketing to California residents directly. CIPA doesn't apply. It's totally different. Like I said before, if you drop a tracking cookie on a resident of California's computer without their authorization, technically you're in violation of CIPA. So that's the thing. And so the way I've been talking about it to my clients is, look, this is a stupid lawyer thing. We hate it. We think it's ridiculous. We think it's a money grab. But it'll cost you $120 a year, and you don't have to worry about this or any of the other stuff. We'll set up the correct policies. We'll put in the cookie consent solution, and it'll stay up to date with the latest changes and policies going forward. So it's $120 a year of basically lawyer insurance. And generally businesses are like, yeah, just set it up. That's been our approach. CIPA is the new Getty Images letter, is what it is. Except for there might have been some evil intent by people stealing Getty Images. In this case, I'm just running Google Analytics and I live in Vermont. What? Anyway, but that's the new scam. Yeah. All right, Kristen, does that help? And hopefully we'll have Hans from Termageddon on pretty soon, and he'll be a great resource to ask questions. All righty, final question of the day, and it is from Sherry. Hey, Sherry. Okie dokie. In Namecheap, I'm redirecting a domain to an existing website. I set the DNS to basic DNS. I'm not sure what that means. and it said I needed and as it said I needed to do, and set the domain from example domain and redirecting the existing website. Not sure I follow that, but I'm going to keep reading. This started to redirect immediately using the example domain, but it's not showing up yet if I have HTTPS or www. Ah, yes. Okay. Is this something that needs to propagate longer? Probably not. So here's my question for you, Sherry. Do you have a www record set up on the DNS? So here's how it. Oh, there are no records in the DNS. Don't do that. So you're trusting some ridiculous web host, and then maybe they'll get it right. Don't do that. You just want a legitimate, real DNS record setup. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so this is. Okay, so you're redirecting the old URL to the new URL. Is that right? This is where I'm getting lost with example domain and new domain and whatever. It's a new domain redirecting to an okay. So you should, Sherry, all of this depends on your domain provider. And there's 8,000 different ways. There's no consistent standard. Like I could tell you how to do it in Cloudflare. Or I could tell you how to do it in GoDaddy, but I don't know how Bluehost or Namecheap do because I don't use those folks. You'd have to probably talk to their support unless somebody here knows how these particular companies do their thing. Like I know in GoDaddy, for example, you can just add a forwarding URL and it's part of their service and it'll just forward everything. And they give you the option of, is it everything or www and just the root domain or whatever? That's the cause. That's why you're seeing what you're seeing. It's just not set up correctly. And Melanie's saying htaccess, there's not even hosting for this domain, right? If you have hosting for the domain, and you could totally do this with htaccess, but it sounds like you're doing the redirect at the registrar DNS level, right? So just talk to them and they'll show you how to do it. They're going to have some weird way of doing it that's, specific to their setup. So that's, or put the DNS in Cloudflare and you can do an easy redirect with a page rule. Like what should be happening, like the recommended way to do this is you should have an A record that's going to at and the IP address of your server, at or the domain name. Oh my goodness. And then you have a CNAME of www that's going to the domain name. That way, in the DNS, you're going to push the redirect over to the raw domain. If the domain itself is what WordPress is installed on. Now, HTTP and HTTPS, that's something that needs to be handled somewhere. Something needs to be, if traffic is coming in with HTTP, it needs to be redirected to HTTPS. And you can handle that in htaccess. A lot of security plugins will do that for you. Cloudflare will do that for you. Cloudflare has just a toggle that says make everything HTTPS and it'll just work. So it depends on this particular setup in this hosting situation that you're in. You should not need, you probably don't need to create an SSL if you're forwarding at the DNS level to another domain, right? So it's going to take that domain name and regardless of HTTP or HTTPS, it's going to forward it to https.newdomain.com, right? So you need SSL, obviously, on the actual website. But again, Cloudflare would just handle this for you. It's another plug for Cloudflare. All right, good? That makes sense? It would be wonderful if all web domain companies would have a standardized way to do all of these things. However, all of them do it differently. And that can be frustrating. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap it up for us today. We have reached the end of the questions, and it is just now after 2 p.m. Central Time. Thanks for hanging out with me for the last hour or so. It's been fun. We've covered a lot of things. I'll be back Thursday for office hours of next week. And the following week is when we'll have a great talk about talking to your clients about website security. Again, thanks for hanging out with us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week here on Hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.